The sun bled gold over the vast Texas plains, stretching shadows across the endless fields of the Carter Ranch. The wind carried the scent of dust, hay, and old memories, some too heavy to remember. Jacob Carter tightened the reins of his horse, Boone, as they approached the old barn near the creek. It had been a long day herding cattle, and all he wanted was silence. But silence was a rare thing on this land. It always seemed to whisper of the past. He had inherited this ranch from his father, a man carved out of tradition, steel, and stubborn pride. Around here, the Carter name meant respect, discipline, and the unbending rule that outsiders stay out. Jacob had lived by that code for years, until that night, the night she came. It was close to midnight when Jacob first heard the cry. At first, he thought it was the wind pushing through the canyons. But then it came again, raw, trembling, and human. "Please, let me free." The words pierced through the hum of the crickets, so faint he almost thought he imagined them. Jacob stopped on the porch, hand frozen mid-motion as he reached for his lantern. Boone snorted nervously from the stable. The cry came again, closer this time. Without a second thought, Jacob grabbed his rifle and started toward the sound. The moon hung low, silvering the grass and painting the world in ghostly light. He followed the voice, past the barn and down toward the old fence that marked the edge of his land. Then he saw her, a young woman tangled in the wire fence, her dress torn, hands bleeding from trying to free herself. Her face was pale, streaked with dirt and tears, her eyes wide with fear as she looked up at him. "Don't shoot," she whispered hoarsely, voice cracking. Jacob lowered his gun instantly, taken aback by the desperation in her tone. "I ain't gonna shoot you, ma'am," he said slowly. "You're hurt." She flinched when he approached, pulling against the wire. "Please don't take me back," she cried out suddenly, her voice breaking in panic. Jacob paused. "Take you back to who?" She looked over her shoulder, into the darkness as if expecting something or someone to appear. "Please, I'll do anything. Just don't let me go." Something inside Jacob twisted. He had seen fear before, on the faces of wild horses trapped in barbed fences, in the eyes of men during the drought years, but never like this. This was the kind of fear that came from captivity. He knelt beside her carefully, pulling his gloves off. "You're bleeding. Let me help you out of this, okay?" For a moment she hesitated, then nodded faintly. Jacob worked in silence, unwinding the rusty wire from around her wrists and skirt. Every time he touched the metal, she winced but didn't pull away. When she was finally free, she stumbled and he caught her by the arm. She was shaking all over, her breath short and quick. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. Her lips trembled. "They'll find me if you tell anyone. Please, I just need to get far away." Jacob looked out at the horizon. Beyond his ranch stretched miles of barren land, and the nearest town was half a day's ride. No woman could survive that alone, not in her state. "You're not going anywhere tonight," he said firmly. "You'll stay here till sunrise. I got a spare room in the bunkhouse." She stared at him with disbelief, as though kindness was a foreign language. "Why would you help me?" He hesitated, then simply said, "Because I can't stand watching someone trapped." That night, after she fell asleep, Jacob sat outside under the stars, his mind spinning. His father's voice echoed in his head. "Don't get involved with strangers. They bring trouble." But when he thought of her trembling hands and those desperate words, "Please, let me free," he couldn't shake the image. Something was terribly wrong. By dawn, he decided he needed answers. When he entered the bunkhouse, she was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the old wooden floor. Her name, she said, was Elena. She had escaped from a nearby estate, the Rothmore Ranch, one of the biggest and most feared properties in the county. Everyone knew the Rothmores were powerful. They owned hundreds of acres, employed dozens of workers, and had rumors swirling for years about the way they kept people. Elena's voice trembled as she spoke. "I was brought there 3 years ago to work as a maid. But it wasn't work. It was a prison. No one was allowed to leave. They took everything, our money, our names, even our letters home. If we tried to run," she swallowed hard, "they made an example of us." Jacob's fist clenched. "You saying they held you against your will?" She nodded. "I thought no one would ever believe me." He sat back, staring at the floorboards. He'd heard stories about Rothmore's laborers, but no one ever dared question them. The sheriff was in their pocket, and everyone who lived nearby stayed silent. His father always said, "Tradition keeps order." But for the first time, Jacob saw that tradition could also keep cruelty alive. "You can't go back there," he said. "I know," she whispered. "But if I stay here, they'll come looking." Jacob stood up. "Then they'll find me waiting." That evening, as the sun dipped low again, a cloud of dust appeared in the distance. Riders. Jacob's gut tightened. Rothmore's men. He moved Elena to the cellar behind the barn, instructing her to stay quiet. Then he walked out to meet the riders, rifle slung casually across his shoulder. There were 3 of them, all wearing black coats with the Rothmore insignia. The lead man, a tall brute named Silas, grinned when he saw Jacob. "Evening, Carter," Silas drawled. "Heard someone's been trespassing on your land. A runaway. Seen anyone?" Jacob met his gaze steadily. "Ain't seen a soul." Silas's eyes narrowed. "That so? We tracked her this way." He leaned forward on his horse. "She's property of the Rothmore estate. You wouldn't want to be harboring stolen goods now, would you?" Jacob's blood ran hot. "Property." The word burned in his chest like fire, but he didn't flinch. "You can check the fields if you want." "She ain't here," Silas smirked. "We will." For the next hour, they searched the property, through the barn, the tool sheds, even around the creek. Jacob kept a calm face, but every second felt like a hammer striking his ribs. Down in the cellar, Elena waited, listening to the sound of boots above her head, praying. Finally, Silas rode back. "Guess she moved on," he said. "If you see her, Carter, you best tell us. Rothmore don't take kindly to thieves." Jacob's jaw tightened. "I'll keep that in mind." When the riders left, the tension drained from him like air from a wound. He went to the cellar and opened the hatch. Elena was curled up, trembling. "They're gone," he said softly. Tears welled in her eyes. "You risked everything for me. Why?" Jacob sighed. "Because it's what a decent man should do. My pa used to say that helping the helpless goes against tradition, but maybe that's one tradition worth breaking." She smiled faintly through the tears. "Thank you." That night, as the crickets began their song again, Jacob sat on the porch, rifle by his side, watching the stars return to the sky. Somewhere out there he knew the Rothmores weren't finished, but neither was he. He'd made his choice, and there was no going back. Elena slept peacefully for the first time in years, and Jacob Carter, the quiet rancher who once swore to follow his father's rules, became something different, a man willing to fight tradition for the sake of freedom. And as the wind carried her words once more through the quiet ranch night, "Please let me free," he whispered back. "You are." The morning came quietly, as if the wind itself feared to wake the sleeping ranch. Jacob Carter stood by the corral, his hat low against the rising sun. He hadn't slept much. The events of the night kept playing in his head. The men, the lies, the fear in Elena's eyes. He knew the Rothmores wouldn't give up that easily. Men like them never did. They'd come back, maybe with more men, maybe with lawmen in their pocket. But Jacob didn't regret what he'd done. For the first time in years, his heart felt clean. Elena stepped out from the bunkhouse, wrapped in an old flannel blanket. Her hands were still raw from the fence, but she looked stronger somehow, like someone who'd remembered what breathing felt like. She watched Jacob from a distance, hesitant to disturb him. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "Thank you for not turning me in." Jacob didn't turn immediately. "I told you before I don't stand by when someone's trapped." She walked closer. "You risked your land, your name. Everything. Why?" He looked up at her, the corners of his mouth tightening. "Because I've seen too much of what happens when good folks stay quiet." For a long moment there was silence between them, broken only by the sound of Boone stomping his hooves. Then Jacob said, "You can't stay here forever. Elena, Rothmore's men will come again. I can hide you for a time, but not forever." Elena's eyes glistened. "Then I'll go far away, somewhere they can't find me." Jacob nodded slowly, though the thought of her leaving brought an ache he didn't expect. "I'll get you safe passage to the next county. My friend Doc Evans runs a wagon line there. He owes me a favor." Why would he help? Because he's one of the few left who remembers what right and wrong mean. That day, Jacob prepared the wagon, packed food, and gave her one of his coats. Elena tried to refuse, saying she couldn't take more from him, but Jacob insisted. "You'll need it more than I will." By sundown, the plan was set. She'd leave before dawn. Jacob would ride halfway with her, then turn back before anyone noticed. But fate had a different plan. Just as the sky burned orange over the plains, they heard horses. Not one or two this time, many. Dust rose in the distance like a storm. Jacob's stomach dropped. "They're back." Elena's face went pale. "What do we do?" Jacob's eyes hardened. "We fight smart. He rushed her into the cellar again and covered the entrance with hay bales. "Stay quiet. No matter what you hear, don't come out till it's over." Elena grabbed his sleeve. "Please, Jacob, don't get hurt because of me." He looked at her for a long moment, then gave a faint smile. Freedom always costs something. Might as well pay it for someone who deserves it. When he stepped outside, the dust cloud had grown. At least 10 riders came thundering in, led by Silas, and behind him rode a heavy-set man in a black coat with a gold pocket watch gleaming in his hand. Baron Rothmore himself. "Evening, Carter," Rothmore called, voice smooth as oil. "We seem to have lost something precious. You wouldn't happen to have her, would you?" Jacob stood tall, shotgun across his shoulder. "You call a person precious like you own 'em. You don't own people, Rothmore." Rothmore's smile faded. "Careful now. That woman you're hiding is a contract worker, legally bound to my estate. You're breaking the law." Jacob spat in the dirt. "Your law ain't justice." The men around Rothmore shifted in their saddles, uneasy. They'd seen Carter's aim before. He was known for never missing. Rothmore dismounted slowly. "You think you can play hero, son? You'll lose your ranch. Everything your father built." Jacob's voice dropped to a growl. "My father built this land on sweat, not chains. And I'll be damned if I let your kind poison it." Silas scowled. "Enough talk. Search the place." But as the men spread out, Jacob fired a warning shot into the air. The echo rolled across the fields like thunder. "Next one won't miss," he warned. The standoff stretched tight as wire. Rothmore's men froze, waiting for an order. Then Rothmore smirked. "You're brave, Carter. Foolish, but brave. Let me make it easy. Give me the girl and I'll forget this ever happened." Jacob's grip tightened. "You'll have to go through me." Then so be it. The next few minutes blurred into chaos. Gunfire cracked through the air. Horses screamed. Dust and smoke filled the yard. Jacob ducked behind the water trough, returning fire. 2 of Rothmore's men went down. Silas tried to flank him, but Jacob's bullet grazed his shoulder. Inside the cellar, Elena pressed her hands to her ears, tears streaming as the shots rang above. Every sound felt like thunder in her chest. She wanted to stay hidden like Jacob said, but when she heard him cry out, a sharp grunt of pain, something in her broke. She pushed the hay aside, climbed out, and ran toward the barn. Jacob was kneeling, clutching his arm where a bullet had grazed him. Silas was approaching with his gun raised. "No!" Elena screamed, grabbing a pitchfork from the wall and swinging it. The metal prong struck Silas's shoulder, knocking him back with a roar of pain. Jacob turned, stunned. "Elena, what are you doing?"
"I'm not leaving you!"
she cried. The remaining men hesitated. They hadn't expected resistance. Jacob, fueled by adrenaline, grabbed his rifle again and fired twice more. The last of Rothmore's men dropped their weapons and fled. Rothmore stood there, face pale with fury. "You'll regret this, Carter. I'll have you in chains by sunrise." Jacob stepped forward, blood dripping from his sleeve. "Then I guess I'll see you in hell first." Before Rothmore could draw, the sheriff's voice thundered from the road. "Hold it right there!" Everyone turned. Sheriff Mendez rode in with 3 deputies. Apparently, the gunfire had drawn attention. Rothmore straightened, adjusting his coat. "Sheriff, this man assaulted my employees and is harboring stolen property." Jacob didn't speak. He just stepped aside so Elena could walk forward. She faced the sheriff with trembling hands but fierce eyes. "He's lying. They kept me and others like prisoners. No pay, no freedom. Ask anyone who worked there." The sheriff's brow furrowed. "That true, Rothmore?" Rothmore's smugness flickered. "Preposterous. She's delusional." But then Silas, bleeding and shaking, spoke up. "She's telling the truth, Sheriff. You know what goes on out there. We all do." The silence that followed was heavy as stone. The sheriff looked from Rothmore to Jacob, then finally to Elena. "You're under arrest, Rothmore, for illegal confinement, assault, and violation of labor laws." Rothmore tried to protest, but the deputies seized him. As they dragged him away, his threats echoed across the field. "You'll pay for this, Carter. All of you." Jacob exhaled, the adrenaline draining from his body. Elena ran to him, helping him sit. "You're hurt." He chuckled weakly. "Just a scratch." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You could have died." "Worth it," he said simply. "You're free now." The sheriff approached, tipping his hat. "Carter, you did right. But it's gonna be rough for a while. Rothmore's got friends in high places." Jacob nodded. "Then I'll stand tall in low places." For the first time, the sheriff smiled faintly. "You always were your father's son, only better." Days passed. The news spread like wildfire. Rothmore's empire had fallen. Dozens of workers were freed. and investigations began across the county. Jacob's ranch became a symbol of courage, a place where justice still breathed. Elena stayed for a while, helping tend to the horses and repair the fences. Every morning she walked out to the ridge, breathing in the open air, whispering to herself, "I'm free." But one evening she found Jacob by the stable, his arm now bandaged, watching the sunset. She approached quietly. "The wagon leaves tomorrow," she said softly. He nodded, trying to smile. "You'll be safe there." She hesitated. "I don't want to go without saying thank you. You didn't just save me, Jacob, you gave me my life back." He looked at her, eyes filled with something deeper than words. "You did that yourself. I just gave you a hand up." The next morning, when the wagon rolled away down the dirt road, Jacob watched until it vanished beyond the hills. The wind blew through the grass, carrying a faint echo, her voice free and unbroken. And as he turned back toward the ranch, he knew one thing for sure: sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is break the rules that never should have been written. The ranch stood quiet again, but Jacob's heart wasn't the same. He had gone against tradition, against fear, and found something greater than both. Freedom wasn't just for Elena anymore, it was for him too.